So, no, I worked with Droog already since 2018. And for the past, I think, 5 years. Wait. Oh my God, it's already 6 years. I've been making many exhibitions, at least twice a year. And so now this one immediately rolled in the show, because the artists are not only visual artists, but they're also designers or architects sometimes. So I think it fits very well with the gallery in Droog. So
nice. And how many days will the exhibition be?
2 months. Yeah.
2 whole months.
Exactly. So in the festival, it was only 3 days. So you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, big venue, 70,000 people, and you just rolled with it. Now in the gallery, it's going to be more smoothened out, and the people will walk in, walk out, come back, and linger. I think that is much more interesting in a way that people can spend more time with an art piece or a design piece to ponder upon. So I'm very happy about that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you in a second to kind of go through the whole thing from the beginning.
I will.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So maybe tell me about your day.
Well, my day was good. Today I went to a village called Aiosterapon. And Aiosterapon is a village very remotely in the mountains of Limassol. And I brought my artists that are staying with me in my residency in Larnaca there.
So you have artists staying with you?
Yes, I don't live alone. I have a cat and 2 artists. Every month they're changing. And this month I have Maria Gutsu. She is a documentary photographer from Moldova. And she is documenting village life and the interaction between people and their animals and their land, mostly, in a very poetic way. She photographs analog, 120 millimeters, sometimes 35.
Nice.
And then I have Harut Hosepian, but he goes with the nickname Hovhar. And he's an artist from Armenia, and he's a master of color. So he colors a lot, and in his paintings you see color only. He sees color everywhere in everything very brightly. And his task in the residency is to kind of go back to the old and traditional pigments of Cyprus, because as Nicosia and Larnaca, we hold very famous pigments that were used in the archaeological time. Not archaeological, we're archaeological now, but in the ancient times, it's called the Nicosia green, and it's a very bright green that is actually forgotten, and he is trying to research these forgotten pigments by remaking them and using them again into modern day paintings. So I brought them to the village, yes.
Nice.
To dig a little bit.
What kind of medium is he using? And is it like
It's mainly paint that he's using.
Paint.
Yeah, so he's a real traditional painter, traditionally schooled from the Academy of Yerevan. And so he usually uses acrylic or oil paintings. But as we also know, acrylic is like the plastic is inside, it dries quick, but it's not very sustainable at the end of the day. So if you dig into the older pigments, it's much more interesting to use them because they're durable, they're natural, and they are so strong and vivid in their colors that over centuries we can still see them on some of our potteries.
Are these artists going to present their work somewhere we can see?
I hope. I'm still looking for an exhibition space. So
nice.
If anything rolls out from here, call me. Yeah.
And how do artists apply actually for your residency?
So I have a website called biod.com. And it's a kind of my project space where I do projects according with biodesign, biotechnology, and bioart. So we've done many projects, and the residency is kind of a prolongation out of it. So you have there a button called residency, and if you tick all the boxes and you're not allergic to cats, you're allowed to stay with me. So you can easily apply by sending me an email. So
excellent. Yeah. That's an amazing initiative. I love the way that you do it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's take things from the beginning, though.
Cool.
Yev Kravt.
Yes.
Where are you from? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I think it's really amazing. I was born in Crimea myself, and but since I was 2 years old, I moved to the Netherlands with my mother, and I grew up there. So my entire life I spent in the Netherlands, between Nijmegen, a very small city close to the border of Germany,
Hmm.
and later we moved to Amsterdam. And somehow I appeared in Cyprus for the past 3 years. So I think life is constantly moving and growing and going on, and Cyprus is now on my path. So
Nice.
yeah.
So you're permanently based here?
No, part-time. So with one leg here and one leg in Amsterdam, as
Hmm.
I'm doing many projects in Amsterdam as well and in other places, mainly in Europe. I need to travel a lot. So I have my residency here and I have a house in Amsterdam, and I'm mainly like 2 months here, 2 months there, and shuffling a bit between places. Yeah.
Nice. And what does your business card say that you are?
Well, actually, it has multiple heads because I am a curator, but I'm also a writer and a researcher and a speaker. So, all related to art, design, architecture, and technology as well. So it's really a blend of all. It doesn't fit on the card anymore. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying curator,
Yeah,
and you have been curating a couple of exhibitions lately, I understand.
that's right.
Let's just start with, can you define what a curator does,
Yeah,
actually?
that's a very good question, Doros. I think that a lot of people they don't know it really, and when you say curator, it's like of course, but yeah, what does a curator do? It's very often among the question perspective, but I think like if we go back in time, curate the job curator comes from the Latin word curare, and curare means taking care of. So back in the days, a curator would take care of a collection. So it could be an archaeological collection or a private collector, a collection from somebody that was collecting anything. And slowly it evolved into a role that a curator works more with artists to develop projects, to design spaces where the artworks could be seen in a better way. And now in the contemporary times, a curator has so many hats on that
Mm.
it's everything. It's about doing a production, it's about doing the deep research, it's about fundraising, it's about so many aspects of exhibition making. And unfortunately, very often people think that it's just hanging a painting on a wall and that's it. But in the reality, it's so much more, and it's so multifaceted that yeah, as a curator, you take care of the exhibition or an artist from A to Z, from the beginning till the end. So it's a really hands-on job. Yeah.
Okay, and how did you end up doing this kind of work? Like, what's your background? What led you there?
Well, actually, I think it has to do a lot, I think, with my mom as well. She really, since I was a child, she always brought me to museums and
Hmm.
galleries, and she really tried to engage me with art and the cultural world. And every time, never really liked museums, like, but I most of the time found one or two or three artworks that I really loved, and I would spend there half an hour fantasizing, and this work come to living. And then slowly I started buying these postcards, that you can get at the museum.
Yeah.
So before I knew, I had a collection of thousands of postcards, and I would hang them in my bedroom. So my bedrooms were collages of artworks that I've seen all over the world during my
Nice.
travels with my mom. And I think that also really ignited the curiosity in me to get to know the artwork or the artist better. And I believe that was the reason why I started studying art history at the end of the day, because
Mm.
I really wanted to know more what I knew a little bit already, and it was a natural curiosity, I think. So yeah, it started from a very young age, and it escalated a bit. But the postcards became real artworks, and the real artworks from a small gallery show ended up into a biennale. And we're constantly shifting and shuffling, and new projects come and go. So yeah.
Interesting. And now, in your current exploration of exhibitions or your current exploration of artists, I
Yeah.
would say, do you follow a specific trend? Would you like the artist to be in a specific medium platform, or are you open with that? I mean,
Yeah.
how do curators handle this kind of
Yeah.
questions when they're thinking about an exhibition?
It's a good question. Again, like, I think that every curator is different, and every curator has its own trademark or its own speciality. So you can have a speciality in old masters, but you can also have a speciality in modernism or mainly contemporary art. But I think that for me is the most important thing is to blend all these experiences and expertises at the end of the day. I love to see design next to an old master painting, and I love to see hyper technological work next to an artwork that is practically built by nature through biodesign. And I think that this dialogue is so interesting to see and to experience. So call it scattered, call it like showing different domains at one, but I think that the narrative between specializations is very interesting. So I try to keep track of all the specializations, and very often they do have a similar conceptual basis. So I love conceptual work in general. So I love research, deep research, and artwork that is built on top of big research. So you have many layers in a work most of the time. So it's not just a pretty picture.
Yeah. Is there a specific theme that currently attracts you?
I think it's always fluctuating. And for the past 2 to 3 years, I've been working more political, more based on psychosociology, about memory, about loss. Like working in Cyprus, you work with division, you work with nostalgia, dreams that have been scattered. So the topics were very heavy and very ungraspable in a way. And I do notice that after having a body of work and have been creating this body of work for so long, I really wanted to go back to the physical and to the body. And that is something that I notice in my work as a curator, but I also see it in a lot of artists, that we kind of go back from the big picture to the big picture in ourselves, and that we're really trying to understand how we function and how we work, and that we look inside of our skin. So my latest exhibition was body heat, because when you stand still, like what is life, or like how do we remain alive, I think body heat is the main ingredient. And also in a time that is really covered in a lot of misery and complicated political conflicts that are bigger than ourselves, it's very important to celebrate life. And I think that the body heat exhibition, it's a way of celebrating life by realizing that we need the heat in our body, our movement, our sweat, our emotions, our care, in order to move on and go on. So that is my personal tendency right now.
Is it also kind of a reaction towards this tech-dominated lifestyle that we currently live? Like, if you just follow popular media, if you hear the news, it's all about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's all about technology. We're always constantly on our mobile phones, either on some kind of a screen. And I don't know if you feel the same, but recently I feel like there is this shift of moving back to the analog and exploring our humanity, our bodies, our connection with the world. I don't know if it's something that you feel, at least in my artwork, in the last couple of years, I kind of shifted back towards that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something that you see as well with the artists that you work and you personally as a curator.
Well, I think that technology definitely has a very big influence. And like, to give an example, one of the artists in the show is Lucy McRae. And Lucy McRae, she is a body architect, or she's also called a science fiction artist, because she creates fictional future scenarios that might happen. And
Speculative.
100% speculative, but when you see the work, you kind of also realize that maybe it's not that speculative at all, and perhaps some of it could happen. So one of our works that was shown in the exhibition Body Heat, and will be shown now again, is the work Post-Apocalyptic Sherpa. And it's an artwork, it's a photography piece based on a conceptual story where we are in a crisis of touch. So because of all the technological use, our phones, our computers, our digital interaction between people, we forgot how to touch each other and actually be connected physically in one space. So we kind of developed this almost allergic reaction to being physical with each other. So this is one of the images where she's walking in a suit based in pillows, covers, duvets. Her eyes are covered, and she's holding this book, The Rise of the Touch Crisis. And so on her back, she has this compression cradle that, because we can't hug each other anymore, she created this mattress that you can tie, and it compresses you and it replicates a hug, because our human body is still in need of this hug and we cannot escape that, and we need a hug in order to survive. So she created this future survival kit for our future generations to survive our touch crisis. So I think that when we speak about methodology and the relation with tech, I think Lucy is an incredible example of like this speculation of a possible future that is quite terrifying, but there is a beauty in it too. So
funny story about that. In when I was working in Singapore, we used to work in this future-facing media lab, and there was a project called at that time Huggy Pyjama. Huggy Pyjama, and essentially what it did is exactly the way that you phrase it, but the difference is that instead of being an artwork, it was more of a functional prototype of something for a traveling parent. So let's say that you have a father or a mother who keeps going on business trips, and they want to hug their kids, and so they put on this pyjama, which is like a huggy pyjama, and then they had like this vest that they were wearing as well, and they kind of felt the hug of the kid. I mean, this was all the way back in 2012 probably. It was a prototype. It never actually came to fruition as a working thing that went to the market.
Not yet.
Not
Yes.
yet. But I really like the way that these artists look at it, because it's more of a speculative artistic interpretation of a need which is actually becoming more and more realistic, actually, I would say. So from speculative to realistic, if it's actually functional in a way that as humans we can, I don't know, make it work, I guess, then...
Well, or survive. I really see that there is a survival aspect in it. That the term skin hunger came up during COVID, if you remember. That actually people were longing for this touch, and being separated and secluded for so many months, sometimes years, it really did something psychological to a person. So I think that these artworks come from a very natural human necessity in order to survive. That, you know, you can't fill your heart with Tinder comments at the end of the day, and you can't please your skin with likes on Instagram, you know?
Yes.
So
interesting. And maybe mention a few of the other projects so we can get like a...
Definitely. Well, I think when we speak about Body Heat, like I love to not only speak about it in the physical, but also in the digital. And the artist that really inspired me to do the show was the photographer called Smith. And it's a French photographer. And Smith photographs people from the LGBT community through a thermal camera lens.
Thermal camera.
Thermal, yes, that's right. And it was very interesting because when you photograph through a thermal camera, you don't see anymore who you have in front of you. What gender do you have? You don't see the nationality. You don't see somebody's religion. You don't see somebody's sex. And you only judge someone by the warmth somebody's projecting. And I think it's such a powerful a photo series that Smith created that is really celebrating life in a way that through the colors and the warmth that we project. And apparently what I've learned in a thermal camera, that if the color is orange, it's not the color of our skin, but it is an imprint of somebody else's skin. So you see an orange color only after a hug. So like placing these warmths into color, it's a photography practice that is digital, but again, placing into color to visualize the warmth of the body, I think it's incredibly strong. And then we have Bart Hess, and Bart Hess he's a designer, and he presented his work Grotto, which he made. The Grotto is an older work, but now he revisited it, and we created 3 massive pillars of 5 meters in the middle of the space of this of the exhibition. And so Grotto, it's like the grotto, but it looked like a skin. So he used latex that he painted on many, many layers, and it was hanging out of the sky like a stalactite and a stalagmite. And with that, the artist was celebrating the space of a grotto. Like a grotto has something very poetic, but also something very spiritual, and it's a place where we go to find something, or when we go on a quest, but it's also a space where our ancestors made their first drawings on the walls, and we made our children and human survival, and our skin is actually also like a grotto that inhabits us. So that is keeping our warmth inside. And so yeah, he puts the grotto as a matrix space, and our skin as a matrix space that we inhabit. So I think, yeah, so this is another example of how to take the theme body heat to a complete other level, where we ponder upon our skin and the function of our skin, and that we praise our skin as well that we inhabit. So that was a massive one. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it was like situated in a room. Was like a installation where you walk in and.
So it was a very dark space, and you had 3 massive 5-meter pillars hanging from the sky all the way down. You're allowed to touch them. You're allowed to interact them, and it's very interesting that when you see them, they look very static, but the once you touch it, you realize it's soft.
Yes.
So it's this surprise effect that you have. So yeah, these are the artworks that are really triggering my mind, my philosophy, my thinking, and to work with these artists to see body heat from so many different perspectives. I think it's very important to stand still with it and ponder upon these topics that are so vital and so crucial. And it's not biological, but it brings it to another level.
Yeah, and they are all so physical as well, like tangible materiality. It's again maybe a reaction to the digital, to the online maybe artworks, or even to this concept that kind of existed a couple of years ago, especially during COVID, where we're going to have like the whole artwork kind of move into this metaverse.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. And like another artist, actually 3D artist, was Mike Pelletier, and he's a Canadian artist, and he's actually he's questioning that when we design in 3D or in the digital, we design only the surface. It's not that you design the bones of the skeleton and the organs that keep it in place, but it's just the surface that you mimic from a person. So one of his artworks that we also showed in the Body Heat exhibition was very interesting, because you see a figure that looks like a human, but it's made out of a cloth, and he just changes a few parameters. And because the inside is empty, it drops. And it's the moment that science hits in, and you see that the energy is getting out of the body, and then he mixes the parameters, and the parameter goes up, and the body starts moving, and it becomes like a hypnotic dance. So I think it's very important to kind of think of how do we mimic reality in the digital. But the digital is also just a surface, and he questions that by showing this piece, that how do we separate the real from the digital, and this interesting
And I guess the
philosophy.
fluidity of the body as well.
100%, yes.
So
Yeah.
you do have a body which could be fluid in a variety of situations. And was it like, it was anthropomorphic, I guess,
Yes,
the body?
absolutely. So it resulted into like a dance chain of 5, and it's called constant iterations. So as it's a constant, it's constantly repeating each other, but he's just changing one parameter of the 3Ds. So whether it's gravity, whether it's another parameter that is inside, but it's repetitive, and it's constantly morphing into a new shape. And at one moment you almost see a mother-like figurine with her babies, but then it blows out and it morphs into a new body, and that it's incredible. Like
Nice.
Yes.
Was it projected like on a screen?
Yes.
Or was it screen based?
We had a huge LED screen, 6x4, I believe, and we projected it on it. So people were really hypnotized by the work. So
Nice.
yeah.
And where was this exhibition presented?
This was in Rotterdam. It happened 2 weeks ago.
Finished.
It's now finished. It was just a 3-day exhibition during the North Sea Jazz Festival. It's the biggest jazz festival in the world. But don't be afraid. We're going to show it now in Amsterdam as well,
Nice.
in a gallery space called Droog, and it's a design platform. So we're going to bring it now to a more gallery space. So I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
How many artworks in total?
It's 14 artworks.
14.
Yeah. So, and all speaking about body heat, but from a completely different perspective. Yeah. But again, the digital perspective is so important. So we can speak about body heat from a metaphysical perspective, but I think to question body heat in a digital perspective makes it much more interesting.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how would you...
Well, if you like, as we're trying to mimic the real into the digital very often, in whether it's on the internet or in our virtual worlds or our digital artworks, something like body heat we can't really mimic, because for now we can't really mimic our heat. And what Mike Pelletier is doing by showcasing that it's just an empty environment inside, and we only have this surface layer, that questions it already. Another example that is a bit more spicy is Pleun van Dijk. And Pleun van Dijk, she's a Dutch designer that was very fascinated by objects of desire. So she says humans are using more tools for our pleasure than ever. Like if you enter into a sex shop, you see so many tools with these hyper unrealistic surreal forms and shapes, and us humans, we become part, like we use to climax with technology. You know, we can't do it on our own anymore, but we need technology more than ever. And I believe that one of the tools was sold last year 52 million times. So
Really?
these are the numbers. And I believe it was the Satisfier. But
It's called the Satisfier.
yeah, so 52 million women over the world are using this tool to climax. So she was fascinated about that, and she started analyzing the shapes and creating a data set by technology. She was feeding the computer a data set with all the shapes of these objects of desire. And she prompted the question, make a new tool for humans to use. And the machine started thinking, creating, making new shapes. obviously they were not functionable because the machine doesn't know how our human body works. So, and
Interesting.
that relation between the human body and the tech, I think it's so interesting when it comes to body heat as well, because in the end she made sculptures out of the new shapes that she created. So the machine, she created a data set. The data set created new shapes that were digital and unusable, and she sculpturized them. So these new objects of desires are now in shapes of 1 meter by 1 meter, and are sculptures of copper or acrylic or ceramic, and you can actually have them in your house if you want.
Interesting. So this is a collaboration between functional items and the computer in order to generate some new forms, some new objects, which the computer would assume that they would have been functional.
Exactly, based on previous models.
And it's a complete fail.
Yes, you can say
as
so.
As far as functionality is concerned, I mean. But they're obviously very interesting as exhibition pieces. So let's kind of analyze this a little bit. There's this new trend, I think, right now with artists that they're saying, what is the role of artificial intelligence in an artwork? And they're kind of thinking about this, they call it the thinking brush. So it's sort of like a collaboration between the computer and the artist in generating something unique. How do you feel as a curator? How do you feel about this relationship and these new tools or methods that artists are using? And from your experience, do you think that so far have we produced something that you find interesting?
Well, I think I love the movement. Like, I think that the movement that we have right now in our technological universe is that our toolbox as curators, but also as artists and designers, is growing. So we have much more to work with. Of course, AI had a very big peak a few years ago, and now it's peaking again with Sora and the new version of ChatGPT. But there are so many other AI models that we can use, and I think it actually extends also our capacity. I think it nurtures our possibilities and it extends our capacity. So I think it's very interesting to use AI as a mirror board for yourself and your ideas sometimes. Of course, we also have AI-generated artworks that we prompt in multiple layers and then rework, or we use data sets in order to create these AI sculptures, for instance. And I think that is definitely, we are getting into a conversation with technology, and that is something that has not been possible before. That the whole Web 2 was very based on one-way direction giving, and now we're going to a system that is immersive and where we actually communicate with the machine and with the technology and actually go into a very fruitful new conversation, into a fruitful new domain for artists to explore. So I think it's truly remarkable the time that we're living, and I just can't wait for all the new developments to arise. So,
okay, there's a lot to unpack here, I guess. Let's start with one of the most current and heated debates. If we look at generative art, the prompting and typing in, and then the generation of a new image. First of all, there is this issue that there's a lot of artists who are kind of annoyed that these big companies kind of got all of their work and without permission they put them in a database, and they generated like huge databases where the machine learning algorithms can draw information and generate a new image. So I get them, of course. I mean, it's their own property, and somehow these companies, they got them and they made them available for a fee. On the other hand, since technology is there, the alternative would have been if someone approached these artists and told them, okay, so how about I buy the rights to use your collection as part of my database in my software that kind of generates new images through artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, none of the two scenarios are good. Because in the first scenario, you're using images without permission.
Yeah.
In the second scenario, you're essentially centralizing and you're saying the big companies that have the money are the ones that are going to generate the AI that the people can use afterwards.
Yeah.
So we have two, and I don't think there's a third scenario. I mean,
no, I think we're so far already in it that we're like the way we share data, and our data has been shared for the past decennia since the start of the internet in 95. It was uncontrolled for so long, and now all this data is out there, and our data is flaking and flickering, and we keep on uploading new data to it, and new data is used and prompting new algorithms. So we're already kind of a bit late stepping in and trying to redefine our boundaries, you know? While the train is already running full force, you know, like you cannot stop this train. You can only make sure you lead it into a right direction. So I think that when it comes to artists, and it's a concern of many artists, that the AI will take over their jobs, and yes, it will happen. Like many jobs will be taken over. Like, let's not be delusional in this case. I think that a lot of graphic designers are in big fear because of all the new ways of designing with and through AI. Writers are also terrified when ChatGPT is again opening a new an update. So I think that jobs will get lost. But the question, how do we protect the rights of the artist? I think it's very, very important to discuss and to actually delve deeper in. And it's so important for us to understand the boundaries of intellectual property. I think that in a way there is this tendency, you create something, upload it directly on our Instagram to see what is happening. It is interesting, it is important, but you also need to understand that you're kind of, you're feeding the machine at the same time. Yeah.
And also, I guess the amount of generated art that exists right now versus the amount of human-made art is exponentially larger as quantity. Yeah. So essentially, as we are retraining these models, we are retraining them with images which have been generated by artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So we're kind of feeding that aesthetic back into the machine.
Yes, yeah.
And we are kind of normalizing it as a way forward, because the more we generate, the more we're going to repeat ourselves in...
But I think that this is also a very big responsibility for the academic world, and also for the world of like art schools and so on, to not, yes, it's important to train the person to create, but I think these days we also need to know how our juridic rights are. And that is something a starting artist needs to learn. Like, I would love to see in an academic sphere a course on IP, or on how to digitalize my work and how to protect my work from, the big data web. I think that these topics should be addressed by educational institutions. And so far we have like maybe master degrees or courses or whatsoever, but you really need to dig deep. And very often after 2-3 hours of research, it's not enough. And there are so many buts and ifs and so on. And I would love for the new generation artists to be a bit more aware of where they're stepping in when they're creating.
Well, the thing is, I don't think there is currently an agreed way to proceed with the IPs, though.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an ongoing discussion, and I mean, judging from my students, at least I'm going to tell you my experience from class. I see a lot of people who are scared.
Yeah.
And we try as a university and as a department to kind of tell students to use the technology as a means to understand it. So the more you get exposed with it, the more you're going to understand its capabilities and how you can make the technology work with you instead of against you.
Yeah.
So a very common thing that people are afraid of is that I am a startup and I need I need a website. So I can either go to an affordable web designer, which is usually a student or maybe a small web design firm that I can afford to pay in order to create a website for me to try out the market. Alternative is you go to an AI system which can generate a website for you with a couple of clicks and very cheaply.
Yeah.
I mean, if you compare these two things, I think in a couple of years, if not already, the AI will probably prevail. Because, you want something as cheap because you're testing out a new business. You don't want to invest in a big amount in order to test it out. And then as your company grows and you realize that it's time to maybe rebrand, it's time to make something more professional, then is the time that you can go to like a firm that they can take over the whole production for you. And then you don't have to worry about it. Just assign it to someone professional. You're going to get something professionally done, and you're going to have the human touch. You're going to have someone who's going to discuss with you. Let's see your needs, and you produce. So I would say that the people at the beginning stages will probably not survive as much, whereas the people in the intermediate and the higher stages of their career is probably going to be more successful. So it's important to realize all of these things from the beginning, and these are the consequences of AI right now in design.
Well, I think a very good example of AI here is that once somebody described me AI as a pool with bubbles, and these bubbles are red and sometimes blue, and that the machine can say, oh, this pool has red bubbles and blue bubbles, but the machine cannot say, if you combine the red and the blue you get purple. And I think that is something very interesting, and that is something still very human. Again, I don't know how long it's going to take until the machine is going to take that thinking over to, but the fact that the machine is not able to make purple makes me somehow really happy, because this is something about sensitivity. So in our web world, we see a lot of trends, and we see trends in design, we see trends in speech, but you also see that more and more people want to identify themselves with their own identity and not a put-on identity, that is pre-prepped and that your neighbor has, and your neighbor in the back and somebody else. You kind of want to create something that is so identical to you and to who you are, and that extends your roots, your thoughts, your beliefs, your relationships, and so on. And I think that up until now, a lot of machines also, they know how to trend think. So again, this is the example of the blue and the red bubbles, but not to really dig into a person and to create something that is so personalized and so unique. And that is still what a human wants. So, and this is exactly where a firm comes in, or an independent designer that is actually knowing and responding on the needs of someone. So I think the example is really good, which you're giving. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and the scary thing is when companies starts interfering with the process. I'm going to tell you an example which I've heard recently. Obviously, it's not validated in any way, but I guess even if it's not true, then it's still a danger of something that a company could potentially do. So I've heard that when you're generating music, there is a very specific pattern in everything that currently AI generated music sounds like. So someone who is trained in music can actually understand that this is AI generated, and because it's a very specific style. Now, music streaming services, without going into specific names, they kind of understand that. And they said, how about if we want to keep our subscribers, we kind of need to train them into liking this kind of AI generated music, because in the future it's going to be cheaper for us to generate music instead of having music producers create songs for us. So right now, apparently, their algorithms share the songs that they have these characteristics of AI generated music in order to make people like them more.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But I think the same counts for art. Like, I see there is a very certain aesthetic in the AI art generation, generative art. Like, the aesthetic is very similar. Like, almost the output of Midjourney is not similar, but you can see, like, up until now, that it has this similar, like, glance aesthetic of creation, and our generation can see the difference still, but our future or our past generations, our grandmothers and grandfathers and so on, they don't see that because their eye is not trained.
Yeah.
And I think that because we are more and more experiencing AI imaging, our eye gets more used to it, and it will slowly blend into our normal life. And why do a photo shoot with someone if AI can generate a photo shoot, or for any advertising? I think that it is a bit scary. It is, but you don't know where it's going. But at the same time, I think it's also up to us to embrace it instead of pushing against and saying, "Oh my God, I don't know where it's going, and it's going to be a catastrophe." I think that it's really up to us to embrace it. Like, okay, it is like this. We cannot change it. The world will only develop, so we need to embrace it. And that is something so strong for the human resilience in general, that we are always adapting. And that is, I think, a quality that is now more important from us than ever, that we need to learn how to adapt instead of being pessimistic, sad, frightened, angry about the development. We are moving forward, and I think that is a power. So,
do you think that this scaremongering comes from the past?
100%.
Comes from
100%.
100%.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about technological progress and evolution in the last couple of years, and the way that they have been expressed in literature and films, it's always a dystopia.
Yeah.
I mean, starting from like Neuromancer and William Gibson.
Yeah.
I mean, the first person who even came up with the idea of cyberspace.
Yeah.
It's like a Matrix style, jacked in the network where you are existing in an alternative electronic medium.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's a destroyed world. And then going, I don't know, go to Snow Crash, for example, from Neil Stephenson, the person who came up with the idea of the metaverse. And which, by the way, the idea of the metaverse of Neil Stephenson is so close and similar to the idea proposed, the current definitions that go around on the metaverse in today.
Yeah.
So it's again, Neil Stephenson thought of this world where you put on VR goggles and you put on like a terminals, and then you go inside this virtual space where you interact with people, you do business, you do entertainment.
I can definitely recommend reading it again. It's so good, and you see so many similarities of these day metaverse back in the Snow Crash book. Yeah.
Oh yes, it's amazing. I mean, his vision. It kind of gives you the impression sometimes that today's tech entrepreneurs, today's tech visionaries kind of look back and they kind of borrow ideas and they kind of throw them and they kind of shape the future as well with that. But that doesn't stop the fact that in every single one of these books, the real world is a dystopia.
Well, I think that is something that I find sometimes a bit saddening, if I can call it like that. But these tales are always cautionary. It's be careful because always something happens. And in the case of Snow Crash, it is this virus that is taking over this digital world and entreating everything, and it ends into a almost like collapse. So I think very often when we speak about the metaverse or we speak about the digital spaces, there is always this be careful where you're going stereotype hanging around it, and that is definitely creating a lot of fears in people's heads. And it's not only that; it's also the way how we create our science fiction films in general. Like, have you ever seen a science fiction film with a good ending?
Well, alien?
Yeah, well,
Obviously, I'm joking,
yes.
but yeah.
I love Alien, by the way, but
Yeah.
I think that is not helping either, and maybe a non-cautionary tale is not interesting for us, or it's not holding our minds, and it's too boring in a way. But it is interesting to think about it, that very often when we speak about the future and a development that we don't know very well, we gain into this new technological xenophobia where we are completely terrified of it and we don't know where the future is going. Like, so
Yeah, indeed. The other thing is, I think that there is a lot of exposure from the big tech entrepreneurs, like driving maybe unrealistic expectations of the future.
yeah.
Like if you hear Elon Musk and his Neuralink ideas, or if you hear like Ray Kurzweil and his mind
Oh
uploading
my God.
scenarios
Yeah.
and all of this kind of stuff, you realize that there is this movement called transhumanism, where they believe that one day we're going to kind of merge, the human body will merge with technology,
Yeah.
but for a very specific and direct reason, which is to make us live longer, to make us become smarter,
Yeah.
and to make us become immortal. So that this very masculine idea of we are going to replace like the fragility of the human body and kind of turn us into a god.
Yeah, so it's cracking the code.
It's cracking. It
Yeah.
kind of brings people to I don't know, it kind of divides them again and makes them
Yeah.
think like this is what we should be striving for, because the alternative is that the world is not good. We're going to die and we're not smart enough and we're not going to live for too long, and these negative connotations of the opposite of what these ideas represent.
Well, I think it is very interesting, and one of the books that I've read really recently was by James Lovelock, and he's not a tech specialist, but he was a scientist, and he was very famous for his Gaia theory, and the Gaia theory was a theory that how also we perceive a human-centered world, that actually everything evolves around us or our human life, but that actually we are intricate and part of a whole natural ecosystem. And this was written in the 70s, beginning of 80s, I believe. So that like back then this thought was absolutely kind of breaking all the laws, because we have been always thinking from a human perspective.
Yeah.
And in his last book that he wrote during, I think in 2021, just a few months before he passed away, he wrote a book called The Nova Scene. And he actually speaks about a future where humans and technology merge. And he says also that, again, this technological world is a world that we cannot stop, and it becomes part of our natural ecosystem. So that is also an acceptance that we need to make, that the nature is our nature, but our technology is not kind of a intruder or like something that comes from the outside. We have already included it into our natural ecosystem, and it's an extension of us. So call it cyborgisms, call it like we are becoming more tech, but it's again this natural development of human life. And so he calls it the Nova Scene, and he also says like, I know this name sucks, but I can't think about anything better, you know? And this humbleness from a scientist that is very deep with his feet into he has worked with Stephen Hawking for many years on many theories, so that is so deeply embedded into physics and chemistry and so on, is actually bowing down also to the technological spheres and saying that we need to include it into our ecosystem and into our natural habitat. So
it's very interesting. It kind of aligns also with the thoughts of the posthumanists.
Yeah.
So you have the trans and the transhumanists and the posthumanists, which are kind of opposing. And the posthumanists are more like, we should look technology maybe as an evolution of the human body, but let's discuss. Let's not say that this is the end game. Let's maybe think about, first of all, and appreciate the body. Let's
Yeah.
move away from the human-centered position that everything revolves around us, and then maybe embrace how we function in the world right now, and then maybe consider the idea that technology can offer a way for us to kind of extend life,
Yeah.
but let's figure it out as we go along. And also,
Yeah.
let's do it ethically. Let's do it in a way that is sustainable for the world. Let's do it in a way which embraces essentially our humanity
Yeah.
and not replaces our
Exactly.
humanity.
But it's
And,
also it's when the values kick in, like what are our values as a human, and what are our ethical values on how we act and how we approach anything we do. I think that again, like it's a very good example of how we have to approach our basic ethics into anything we do,
Yeah.
and not change our ethics for something that we don't know, but again prolong it into your own field and use it. Like
exactly.
yeah.
Do you feel like, just to shift the conversation back into more of the art scene, do you feel like these are themes that artists explore? Have you seen anything?
Oh yes, I definitely like. I think a lot of artists are using these themes right now because, again, like we're living in an uncertain time, as we say very often. I
Yeah.
think times were always uncertain, and times were always in a part of an evolution and evaluating. That this is definitely one of the researches that a lot of artists manifest. It's a question on identity. Who am I? But from the close to the digital as well, because who am I in the digital world?
Yep.
In a world where you can be anybody and anything and take any avatar and go into a new world in a game of Decentraland, for instance, build your own world. Again, who am I in that? And how do I extend my own values and my own being into that digital space? Like, I think it's a very important theme in the arts at the moment. So it's questioning the self in relation to something that is bigger than yourself.
So identity, the self,
Yes.
the body.
Identity, the self, the body. I think it is a very, if you put it into the context of the art history, it's very similar what we did for ages in our art historical practices. Is we've been seeing how we can rebuild portraits or rebuild the perfect human portrait, or scenographies or sculptures, and we were constantly constructing and mimicking our life in order to understand our life a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then you have the heat in the Renaissance, where we started really going inside of our bodies and figuring out how organs work, and you know, how the position of our skin and bones are kept together. And I think that is this natural human curiosity of understanding, and we are doing that also right now in this world where we're living with the new tools in the new environment that we're having. So it can go from the close, so as we said, from the body, the identity, but also to the further, so that people are questioning previous systems. So people are questioning colonialism. People are questioning the system that we have according to the environment, because we all know the crisis is approaching, and the earth is heating up a lot, and we need to do and act upon it. So who am I, and what is my future generation in this heated world, and how do we move on from there? I think that these are definitely very big topics in the art scene at the moment.
Also legacy, immortality as well.
Yeah.
Like, what am I leaving behind?
What am I? Well, there is this artist. I forgot his name, but he's a British artist that decided to break everything he had. So everything what he had in his house, he just he placed it on a pile and went to this, this kind of wrecking ball place that is breaking his glass, his stairs, his chairs, until he had absolutely nothing. Only a little book that is that is writing down everything he had.
Oh, I love that as a concept.
So,
And just to reverse the idea a little bit, so we talked about how artists kind of use these new thoughts on
Yeah.
technology. Do you feel like there are artists who are actually afraid and they have like fear of these new technologies and they kind of don't want to approach them or embrace them?
Yes, I think the fear is big. I think that even there was a research done very recently, and I think that it was done in England, and I believe that 60% is suspicious towards AI, for instance, and 40% is embracing it more. But the dominant party is the one that is fearful, and I do really experience it a lot within the artists I work with a more traditional approach. That like there is this new toolbox opening up, and what is my role in that, and do I need to interact or do I need to exchange, and kind of there is this anxiousness hanging around it, and I think it's very interesting to see that. And for me, this was a push as well to create a program which I do in Cyprus. It's called MADTalks, and it's a program where I invite a speaker from the art field and a speaker from the tech field very often, and artists and tech people talk together in heated debate sometimes. And I think that is so important to lower the conversation level as well, and to say, like, the metaverse is a developing field. It's a developing artifact at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's fine not to know everything about it. And we're so afraid to share our thoughts or ideas when we don't know something exactly, I think, that we don't talk about it at all, or we just neglect it, you know? So I really hoped with this program to exchange more. And who knows, maybe an artist will implement more AI into his work, or maybe not, or maybe do something else with it on a more conceptual level. But we need to keep this conversation going, and it's evolving so fast and so quickly that it's almost impossible to keep up, like for even people in the field. Like constantly new programs are popping up, and different countries, different continents.
Indeed, everything is so quick these days.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. As far as artists and technologies are concerned, it's very often the case that they might be saying the same thing, but in a different language.
Exactly.
And it's all about just making them say it or understand it in a different way, and they kind of like, at the end of the day, we agree. I don't know why we're fighting about or we're even having this discussion.
Or it's the headliners, like we start loving the headliners, and we're just repeating the headliners over and over again. And I think if we speak about NFTs, they had very bad publicity. So every time you touch the topic of NFTs, it's so bad and it's ending, and there will be no NFTs anymore. Like, why would you invest in that? And I think still, if you look into the DNA of an NFT, it's genius. And it has so much incredible, strong potential. But it has so much bad PR that, again, this cloud of fear is laid over it. And that is when you need to keep the conversation going. Like, you don't need to do anything with it, but at least it's good to know a bit more than just the surface.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, NFTCT is indeed a very controversial theme. And also, I think one of the criticism, which might be correct, will be about the underlying technology, that it might not necessarily need to be on the cloud. It could have been replicated in a different way, but having it not on the cloud, on the blockchain. So basically just putting it on the blockchain, it might be unnecessary. And then the people who are looking at it from the outside, they'll be like, I've been buying unique weapons on World of Warcraft in 2005. Why suddenly do I need the blockchain in order to own a painting?
Exactly.
It's this kind of debates which they kind of sometimes we get lost on the hype. Sometimes we just do things in order to do them.
I like that you say we get lost on the hype. I think that is definitely also a thing. That I remember at one moment there was a quote like by Kanye West, like Kanye West has NFT fatigue. Like, what does that even mean? But I do think that we're living in a world that is becoming more interoperable, and that, for instance, to say it in fashion, that when you buy shoes, you want your avatar to wear your shoes too, you know, and you want it to show it into your closet in an NFT, and you want this to be somewhere else, you know. So it's kind of, if you own something, like if I own it in the physical, I also want to have it in the digital. And this can be with a painting, this can be with a sculpture, this can be on many different fields as well. And I think that that is where we're going at the end of the day, that something has more functions and is actually operating in multiple worlds, and not only in the digital or only in the physical. So,
which is one of the main purposes and points of the metaverse.
Yes,
like,
obviously.
kind of merging everything into a single reality. The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel. The opening phrase of Neuromancer by William Gibson is one of my favorite openings of one of my favorite books. So let me ask you a couple of questions so we can close this session. Speculative, obviously, but it would be nice. It could be a yes or no, or you could like to, if you like to elaborate a bit more, feel free. So, do you think we'll be able to ever upload our mind on a cloud?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. 100%.
100%.
Yes. Okay, 99.9999.
Okay, I'm going to leave it up to there. Let me ask you this. Would you sacrifice the life of a sentient digital human? So a human that only lives on a cloud, it doesn't have a physical presence or a body, for a personal secret to stay hidden?
Ooh, I love that question. What an intrigue. You can almost make a theater show out of this.
We can.
Oh, it really brings me back to the film Her, you know, like where you're like the actor is falling in love with its AI machine, and the kind of getting a relationship with it. And I even notice it, like sometimes when we speak to AI, we are polite and very human, and you do build a relationship with it. So I can imagine that if you build up a relationship with somebody that is digital, it's very complicated. Huh? It's a very hard ethical question, and this is where the values kick in, because would you do that or not? Well, I think the logic says no, of course not. But I can imagine that in a plausible reality where your needs and desires and your relationships are shifting to the digital, it might be different. So to be honest, I don't know what I would do in a few 100 years if I would still live. Yes. I think I have to decide it at that moment. Yeah.
Indeed, a tricky question.
Yeah.
And the last one, are we living in a simulation?
Oh, God. I have no idea. Like, I think that if you read the famous book that is the book that is actually covering this simulation theory.
I mean, the two main proponents is David Chalmers and I don't remember his name.
I think it's
theorist.
Yes, I think it's Bromstone. Yes, and he describes it so realistically that after reading the book, you're kind of really distorted in your mind, and you don't know where you are. So I wouldn't exclude this thought still of the thinking, and I like flirting with this idea that there is this possibility, and I think that is also the idea of endless possibilities, and that is life. So if life moves on, we have endless possibilities, endless moments, livings. Human life will continue. We will morph into something else, and like our life is ephemeral, but life in general is not ephemeral, and that is something we need to keep in mind.
It's very interesting because the main argument of David Chalmers, at least, that we are living in a simulation is the fact that we cannot disprove that we're not living in a simulation.
That's right, yeah.
So he's saying as long as we cannot disprove that, then it means it's a possibility, and maybe it's a strong possibility.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me, there was a very old Star Trek episode from, I think it was the Next Generation, where the idea was that there was this scientist who said, we're going to get data. Data is the android, a character that he's very well loved by the people of the fans of Star Trek. And he said, I want to get data, and I want basically to operate on him with the risk of killing him, but I want to understand how he functions, because he's such a sentient android that if we can replicate him, we can make more and more and more, and we can use him for the good of humanity. And they actually, Picard went to court in order to defend Data during this episode. And the way that he defended him was in exactly the same manner. He said, we cannot disprove that Data is sentient. So you are not allowed to kill him. We should not kill him because simply we do not know if he is, which is exactly the same thing as the simulation theory by Chalmers.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think it is definitely very interesting. But again, it's a very Western mind of thinking as well. Yes. It's very Western philosophizing in a way that if you cannot disapprove, you can approve it in a certain way. If you look back in the more Asian way of thinking, they are less factual based. And I think that is also very interesting to maybe learn also from other philosophies, because something like that you cannot prove a fact is much more normal in many Asian countries and in many Asian religions, lifestyles, ways of thought. And I think that definitely, I agree that you cannot disapprove it, but at the same time, you do not have to approve everything always, And some things we cannot prove. Like philosophers have been thinking about the purpose of life for thousands and thousands of years, and we still haven't found it. So can we then actually prove that we are alive at all? So I think that is very interesting of our Western thought, and that sometimes it's good to create some parallel lines of thinking, and it's nice to have multiple possibilities. Not everything has to be always linear and set into stone and just be like that. I think we need to stay open. We need to be open-minded. We need to expand our thoughts and debate and constantly be in this movement.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yev,
Thank
for
you,
today.
Doros.
So I'm going to have all of your socials of the description
Cool.
below. So anybody who wants to follow you and see your work, they can do that from the links below. And it was great having a chat, and I wish you a very nice day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.